Hi guys. Happy Thursday. Happy Scandalous Thursday for all of those who watch Scandal, like me. So let me tell you, funny story. So I was actually posting my post, typing it, and then I went to ABC Spell Checker because as scholars we can't have, spelling errors in our posts. And like the little screen thing came up and it wouldn't let me post. Well, it wouldn't like ABC check it. And so I like kind of refreshed the page and my whole post disappeared. Great, right? So I decided I'm going to do a video since I wasn't retyping all of that stuff. Um, so Christy, great post. I really enjoyed it. You hit on a lot of the talking points and a lot of the stuff I actually thought of in the readings as well when I was going through and kind of formulating my ideas. So thank you for that. And Sean, I love your Sean shows, man. You make my day. But okay, so for your first question you asked, of course we may. Oh, that's not the first question. She said, so in what ways has your institution allocated or reallocated funds within the last few years? Or has the institution implemented policy or practices changes that impact the budget? Okay, so this past summer I interned at Stanford, and our site supervisor there, she allowed us to meet other staff and faculty across the Stanford campus to network and to kind of see if we have any commonalities within each other. And so, me being nosy, I asked, so where I I would always want to detail or to ask the professors like, where are you from? How did you get here to Stanford? Because a lot of them were international, um, and not really U and not mostly U.S. citizens. And so I wanted to know how did they hear about Stanford and how they got there. And they were telling me that Stanford really recruits and goes out to get their professor because they want their students to get a holistic experience and to have a diverse classroom experience. Um, so from investigating from that, um, I went and found out that Stanford they have an allocated budget just set aside just for um, recruiting world-renowned faculty because even in the reading on page what page is this? Jesus. Ah, on when we were talking about, I think it's 64. Yes, 64, I believe, when they were talking about budget. No, I lied. Budget, allocating resources. Oh, here it is. On page 56. That's what it was. Where we were talking about the different institution types. And they were discussing how private research institutions, kind of similar to Stanford, I would say, is Stanford, reflecting a budget um, to compete for premier faculty, provide support for such faculty, and offer support for highly qualified doctoral students. The campus demographics of Stanford, there are more actually graduate students and doctoral students. Well, graduate students are doctoral students, but more graduate students than undergraduate students there. The graduate student population dominates it, and so from that there was you can see and from my investigation that they put more research put more funding in towards getting those premier faculty into getting more doctoral and graduate students there to get the more research funds and to build their programs to build their well-renowned reputation as it says in on page 56 as well. So that was one thing I definitely noticed working there and being nosy and investigating. Okay. Your second question. Do you have any experience with any budgets? With any types of budgets? Okay. So in undergrad at USF, go Bulls, I was the coordinator for student life and traditions, and that is housed under our student government, is in this executive branch. And so basically, we're the programming entity of student government. So we put together all our big university traditions, like Mr. and Miss USF, like our welcome back barbecue when we have in the fall semester to welcome students back. And also one of the programs I was in charge of, which is the annual Apartment and Business Expo. The purpose of the Apartments and Business Expo is to bring off-campus housing on campus to kind of give students information on what's available because students, even though we want students to live on campus, we know we can't accommodate all students to live on campus, at least at our institution. And so we would have off-campus entities come on campus for that one day so they can kind of attract more students to their property. And so that that event on itself had its own auxiliary budget. It was nothing with student fees was brought into that budget. So we had to, or at least I had to generate funds for the event. So the event, basically, me and my staff and my other coworkers, we put together a sponsorship packet that we took to the different apartments complexes to tell them this is the type of package you can get if you choose to participate in the event. And so we had different levels that they can choose from, and we also took it to different vendors across the Tampa Bay area. So if they wanted promotions, they want to bring their business, they want to donate food, they can have promotional items on our flyers and handouts and whatever promotional things we would do. So that event generated over we brought in over $30,000 on our own. It was the largest ever for that event. I was like, yeah. And I posted the Facebook link when I was typing my post to the event, so you can see like the album from the pictures from that event. Clearly, I have to repost it again since I couldn't post at that time. But yeah, so that was my experience with auxiliary budgets, and which was very difficult for me because the budget started with $0. Like we had nothing, and because each year that staff uses that funds, and whatever doesn't get used gets thrown back into some mysterious pot that I don't know about, and I was confused about that, but I couldn't worry about it. So generating $0 to $30,000 was one big accomplishment, and it wasn't easy. I felt like I was pimping people with throwing flyers everywhere, but it was a great event, and yeah, that was a good experience for me. Um, and your last question, you asked, what are the most difficult components to developing a sound budget? I would definitely say, from reading the different types of budgets here, I would definitely say creating formula budgeting. I would definitely say is very difficult because there are components in here that you don't have control over, such as graduation retention and enrollment. Granted, you do have some form of control over that because as an institution, we can't necessarily guarantee that you will graduate, but we will provide the necessary resources in order for you to graduate. But we all know there are extenuating circumstances like financial aid, um, students don't really fit in university, so they leave. So there are different reasons why students don't retain or graduate from an institution. But those are some of the factors that you have to take into account. And the thing about a formula budgeting is just that you don't, for me, from when I interpreted from the reading, you don't have a general sound amount. You're doing a kind of like estimates, and so that can go with you really don't know if this number will have enough, and if you'll be able to support it, and if you don't bring in this amount of people, how are you going to be able to fund certain things? So that's where you can go into taking away funds from certain areas and putting funds elsewhere because you didn't really calculate it correctly. Um, and also in the books it talks about um, the challenges with it. Um, it's on page. What page is this? We're going into because I also believe that performance-based budgeting, kind of similar to formula budgeting, as they stated in here, is also a challenge as well because performance-based budgeting, if I remember correctly from this reading, performance-based budgeting kind of deals with performance-based. So you have to really, if your students don't perform at a certain level, or if your program doesn't perform at a certain level, you don't really generate those funds. And so, like one of the weaknesses that formula budgeting, and especially at public institutions, like I said before, the funding level can differentiate between the two because at large institutions they may have the opportunity to build that funding, but when you're at a public institutions where when that sometimes isn't the same, where you're not really capable of doing that, it can create a issue. I had something in here that was definitely pertinent to reinforce my idea, but I can't find it. Um, Give me a second. Yes, here it is. Okay. It says on page 70. It says critics argue. I have it underlined too, highlighted, and I still didn't see it. Critics argue that formulas tend to reinforce or further privilege the larger and more selective institutions while undermining the efforts of smaller and open access institutions, as well as those that emphasize the liberal arts over pre professional technological fields. So basically, if your school is large, you can do this because you bring in general revenue from different areas, especially you have a big athletics program as well. That itself can be crazy. Excuse me. So I definitely think that there are some challenges to formula budgeting and performance-based budgeting because you don't have that flexibility as in with other budgets like um, initiative-based budgeting, which is more so putting together. Um, Give me a second. Yeah, basically put together different resources, as I say here, to be able to bring in those fundings rather than generating your own or um, depending on others. That's what really formula based and incentive based I really don't like about those and create a challenge and a burden. But that's all I have for you guys. I didn't know it was going to be 10 minutes long. Jeez. I'm going to provide the link for the Facebook album so you guys can see my good work for that event. I was so proud. It's one of my honors. But thanks, guys. Hope you enjoy the post. Have a good weekend and stay warm.